Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of the How to Draw Characters ebook video. And let's start because we have a lot to talk about. So this from the previous one, and let's start with the noses. So noses and other face features can be hard to draw, and but there's a way to make it a lot easier. So let me take the brush, some quick Photoshop tips, and you can do this on paper or in on your iPad, on Procreate or anything else. It doesn't really matter. That's also a tip I want to give everyone. You don't have to. The best way to start learning to draw is, in my opinion, on paper. So don't worry too much about expensive tablets and so on if you're just starting out. So let's start with the lesson. So take a different color. So what I'm doing here is it's always good, like I told before, to use construction to draw things. For nose, I often work with starting to draw a big triangle, and then I give it volume. So and a bit like this. So now it has depth. Then you can add this ball here. So first I draw the shape, and then I draw these construction lines, like here. And then we have a base for a nose. You can erase those construction lines. Let's take a different color. And you can also do this with pencil. For Disney movies, they used to draw with blue pencil first for the sketch, and then in the end they use a gray or black pencil to to start drawing the final drawing. That's because then it's easier to distinguish the different colors of the lines. So now I've drawn this over, and you can erase it again, taking a normal pencil, and now you can start with drawing the final line work, like this. And then you can also shade it. So what I often do is with this brush, I just make this a bit darker. And also because of the construction, you can also know where the bottom side of the nose is. So that's here. So it's following the shape of that nose. So that's also why it's important to know a bit of the construction of that nose. And this is just one nose, but you can also use this to create different noses. So like you can make this ball really big and this part really tiny, so that you have something like this. And here. So now we have this nose here. And you can also make it this a bit longer and this very long. So now you have a really long nose. So like this. You can erase it, and then you can draw the nose on top of it. Like here. So now you have this nose. And then you can draw the shadow, the bottom of the nose with the shadow. And you can make this part darker because there's less light. So what I'm trying to show here is that you can, with this basic construction, you can create so many different noses. It's just changing the proportions. Also here, start with one ball, and then you can add different balls here, like here, and then you draw on top of it and think of the construction and how it's all connected. So you first start with those big shapes. And what's also the nice thing about using that construction is that it's easier to rotate in 3D. So you can draw this ball this side, or you can draw the ball this side. So you can also use that to draw this nose this side, or then this side. So that makes it, and it's still hard, but using these basic constructions are easier for our mind to rotate in 3D. And still hard, but it makes it easier to understand. And that's why they like to use this construction a lot in 2D animation, because then you can turn around things and you can move it around, and still it has the same shapes, but from a different angle. So let's take a look at drawing eyes. So what I often do, the simplest way to draw an eye is simply with a ball. But you want to give it some, you want to make it a bit fancier. And I often do that with using eyelids. For when I'm drawing storyboards or really quick sketches, I simply do a line like this and a line like this. And then you have a decent eye. And you can also add a line here and a line here. And then you can also have an okay eye. So you can start with a ball and then add those eyelids on top of it, like this. What's also a good thing to remember is that when drawing an eye, so here, from the side, you only see a fraction of the eyeball. You only see this part. And this part, it's in the skull. So if this is the skull, so our eyes are protected by our skulls. Another useful tip is that when you're drawing a head, so like this here, and then here we have the nose, to create a mask on top of that head. So like this. Think of what you've seen in the Incredibles. Then you can draw this head. What I also often think of is that if you have this head shape, I take cupcakes out of it, like this. So there's these two holes inside it. And it's also, if you look at the skull, you can see it, that there are two holes, and you can put the eyeballs in it. Now it looks really freaky. But if we make this a bit like this, and we draw the eyelids on top of it, it starts to look better, like this. And on this mask, can create, you can draw the eyebrows. So the eyebrows are sticking a bit outwards. So here I'm drawing some construction, so you can have a sense of the feeling of where the eyes are positioning. So drawing this mask can really help with the placement of the eyebrows and the placement of the eyes in the head. Yeah, and here I'm showing some different eyes. Oh yeah, and I didn't talk about this yet. So our head is so like this, and it's a bit round. Our head, it's not straight. It goes a bit around. So you also see that in the eyes. So when you draw a face, the eyes go around. So you can draw the eyes following that round line. It's just really subtle, but it's good to think of. It's not super flat. So the eyes are wrapped around the face. So it's useful to think of that inside it. Here I'm also showing that the mask, when you're putting down the, so normal, if the eyes are normal, you would just see it like this. So here it's relaxed. And when it's angry, the mask goes like this. And then so the forehead is pushed down. And here as well. But when we are scared, our eyes go like this. And this, of course, exaggerated because it's drawing cartoony here. But because of that, it's also really clear, and you can see it's going like this. It's outward. So this part is fleshy, and I also already shown the skull. So if we have the skull with the jawbone, so this is hard. But here all this tissue, like cheeks, is soft. Also this part, you can have wrinkles here and so on. So you have parts in the face that's hard and parts of the face that's soft. So that can stretch and squash, but the skeleton not or less. So try to remind that when you're drawing expressions and stuff. So this is also a fun method that you see some artists using. So using the T-shape in the head. Here you can see all these T-shapes. And in different, so you can play around with the shape. You can make it as crazy as you want. Here I made some examples, and here you can try them yourself, or better, you can try your own T's and try to fill a whole sheet of T's and make them all different. And then you can start drawing those on. So maybe here. Something like this. So this goes a bit like this here. And then we have a nose that is going like this. I don't know. Normally I would start with then and then I will fix things. Or maybe make something like this. Here. It's really sad. Maybe making the nostrils really big, because this is thin, so we can have a thick, long nose. Really big eyes. Maybe they're overlapping each other a bit. It's a bit cartoony version. And in this stage, I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just playing around a bit. And I would also, sometimes that's just fun and a great way to warm up. So maybe you can try these other ones or try to create your own shapes and see what you can come up with. So it's a great method of trying to get your own create your own head. So you can also use this in an if you're drawing a head like this, then you can also draw this T shape on top of the head, and then you can use it to create your own original design. And you can try different faces. Maybe you think, oh, it doesn't look interesting, so you try maybe a whole different T. But there are a lot of possibilities, and you can play around with it. So now we're here, and here I want to show the face of the woman and the face of the male. And you start with this ball, and then you can add the construction to this ball, and you can add this jaw part on top of it, and then this neck. So these are the three main parts of the face. And with the female face, and of course this is stereotypical, so it can change all the time. So, but often with female, I try to have these curves here to have it this round feeling. But sometimes you want to have a slightly more flat face. So then I'm using a shape like this here that is more flat and goes like this. The fun thing with these shapes is that you can play around with the proportions. So you can also take this ball and make this jaw really long. And then add all those details on top of it, and try to put a smoothing bit on because the lines are a bit jitty. So I'm trying to draw on top of this construction. So these eyes here, eyebrows, the ear, and neck. So think of how the placement of the neck is. So, and this is how I start drawing. So then I erase it a bit, and then I try to fix it. So this ball, and then these eyelids on top of it. So here eyebrow and another eyebrow, and then here this nose and the lips. So here, and also for these lips, they also go a bit around the head. So yes. Yeah, and that is how I usually draw the female face. So the main difference is actually that you're using more round shapes and maybe a more tiny nose, and of course you can play around with it. Here I'm showing a bit more of the construction with these male heads, and so and here also of the cranium, the neck, and the jaw. And you can really play around with these shapes. For example, here this character really has a different proportion. So the cranium is this, but the jaw is really thick like this here. And then here we have the neck, and there's also this neck fat. It's pushing up by this collar. So here. For drawing the ears, here you can see it. So what I usually do, I just draw a C line, and then I draw these lines inwards. But I do think of the construction of the ear. So, like this here. Here you can see me using that eye mask for the male. And maybe you notice it with the male, and I don't do it all the time, but often I'm using a bit more sharper corners. And that helps, making it more male. And it's a bit annoying to talk about it because it's so stereotypical. Because you can play around with it, but the standard is that with males you use a bit more sharper corners, and with females a bit softer. But that's not with the female. It's also really nice to use a small pointy nose, for example. So it's a mixture of things that goes together. I think this is a good example of the here the hard parts and the soft parts of the body. So let's go to the next slide. So for the female, I made these two construction things, and you can use it to create your own characters. So how I would draw this, I would start with an action line like this, and then I would start drawing a ball, and then I would, I can start drawing the jaw on top of it, and then the neck, then the torso. And in the meantime, I'm following this this action line a bit. I try to follow it as much as possible, but without breaking the whole, without breaking the pose or the construction. So here, this leg, and you can use all these kinds of different proportions, and I will show that in a bit. So the breast, and sometimes I think of it as a cylinder that is put in here, or you can think of it as two oval shapes, like this here. First. So, but I like to draw it as first as one shape, and using for the arms these cylinders for the construction of the arms, and then the hands, and so on. And with the female, you use, of course, wide hips and smaller or narrower shoulders. And what I also like to think of is that if you have the rib cage, and you have here's the pelvis, and here's the neck with the face. Then I put a vest on top of it, so like something like this. And that vest, let me take a different color, is like this. So forget the breast now, but what I want to show here is that you're using these shapes here, so it goes a bit inwards. let me draw that a bit clearer. So it's what you put on top of the on the rib cage. It's like this, and with a male, so maybe we can put this one here. With the male, it does look a bit different. What I often do then is I'm doing it like this. So that's why you get these wider shoulders. So then you have this feeling. So it goes more outwards, and with the female more inwards. And again, a lot of curves. And this is it's with clothing on. And oh, here I was showing that with the shoulders of the male and the female. So here's the male, you can clearly see it. It's going more outward, and here it's more inwards. And of course, this can change when people get more muscular. They the difference are getting smaller and smaller. Yeah, if you can compare these more, the male goes a bit like this, and this is not that strong guy, so it's not that clear. But with the female, it's like this hourglass, and with the male, it's more this this cone. Here I'm showing some different characters, and we can draw some of the construction on top of it. Make this a bit lower in opacity, and let's draw on top of it. Let's start with this regular thin guy. Then here we have this rib cage, and then the hips. Then we can add the arms like this. And here you can see how I use these shapes to create the body. It's like a stick figure actually, but then with these shapes. And because of these shapes, it's easier to draw different poses and understand the construction behind it. And if you want, you can use this. You can also study some, maybe from animation movies, your favorite characters, and try to look if you can find that construction behind the characters. Also, always trying to have this ground floor of to imagine the floor perspective of the characters. And here basically you can see that this construction of this male is basically the same as this one, but the proportions are different. So here this chest is more pumped up. This is still small. But with this character, it's more square. But even then, you have the same anatomy in it. You have this head, and then you have this chin, this neck, and then this pelvis. Of this here, this is the pelvis, and this is his chest or rib cage. So like this. And here these shoulders are really big. It's really thick biceps, but short arms. So try to think of that. Also, these two are basically the same, only this one has a belly. So think of it, you have still these bones like this rib cage and the pelvis, but you also have this body fat. So if this is his skeleton, let's take a different color. Then here we would have his breast, then his belly like this. That's of course soft tissue, and this is hard tissue. The same, I think that this character looks a bit like this character, and here you can see this construction. Looks a bit same, only he has a bit more fat here. And here, so you can see some different head shapes. And that's maybe interesting. So earlier, or in part 1, I talked about different head silhouettes. And we can take this red color, and first you can see this, it's a bit of this shape, but then I'm adding this jawbone and so on. But you can really start with some basic shapes, and maybe you can take these head shapes and create your own designs. It's not that I'm super original here. These head shapes are used time and again in movies, in animation movies, and it's it's still getting harder to get original character designs or head designs, because there are so much animation movies coming out. But still, you can combine a lot of things to create your own versions. I also like this, that's going outwards, and then it's inwards. So think of those forces. I also like it when this neck goes over in this head, because then you have this simple side versus more complex side. More angular. Yeah, maybe this is a bit round. You can also make it more triangle. You can even push this design more triangle face. So maybe you can play around a bit with that. So you can actually take this head, make it a bit different, and you can check and you can see if that works or not. That's also what I like to do. I like to test out a lot of things, because before you don't know for sure if it works or not. You can only make a guess. Same with these female heads or female bodies. You have all these different characters. So I think this is the most standard one. Again, here, thick hips. But you can use these basic construction, or it's really a simplified version of the anatomy to create your character. So something like this, and you can use the same to this lady with different proportions, like this here. And then you can use this part here and give her this part. So here you see that you're using this part. Maybe this part is connected to this part here, and then the legs are more one shape, but still here. So the fun thing with anatomy is that even when you're drawing, for example, if you're drawing Mickey Mouse or a character like that, you have these bean bodies. But then still you have these shoulders and the rib cage and the hips and the legs connected. So you still have these parts only when you're drawing on top of it. Only when you're drawing on top of it. You don't see so many details. But the anatomy is under it, or else you can't properly move it. The fun thing with an old female is that it has the same construction again, but the posture is more, you have more this, the posture is weak, the spine is weak. So this character is really hanging forward like this here. But you have the same body parts as with the here, this character. Oh. Maybe I can explain a bit about this profile. You can see how big this cranium is. And here we have this jaw. And it's never the same with me because I'm always playing around with it. And every time you can look on maybe some different thing that works. So for this character, it's a whole different side view. The basic shapes are the same, but the positions and the proportions are really different. But that creates different characters. For example, here it's one line, and here you can again see this B line. Or here it's this, and with this heart shape. And these heart shapes make her a bit meaner and a bit older. And this round make her young. So also try to think of that. And it's not these tips I give, these are guides. So it's not, you can play around with them, you can bend them. So here, let's look at these different body types. Here again, I'm showing, and maybe you can try to learn these, try to learn this. And what's really useful if you're going to do figure drawing and you're using these proportions. So what I often do, and I just showed it in part 1, but I want to show it again, so that you're, what I was just showing you, divide, and then you divide. But with cartooning, it's not that big of volume thing. Normally I just eyeball it, and I do it more on feeling. Rib cage, and then this part here, legs here. But it's also really good to first learn a bit of realistic, and then you can tone it down and simplify it for cartoony. That's how I learned it. I'm not a really good realistic artist. Yeah, I don't want to give myself any credits for realistic art, but I still use it. I don't post it that much because I find I'm really bad at it, but I do use it to learn about all these human body and stuff. So I got this question about yeah, I'm trying to learn to draw backgrounds, but I want to draw them more cartoony, but I can't do it. And my response was that don't worry about it. Go study the real thing, and don't worry about drawing too realistically. First learn that and wrap your mind about how to draw things. And once you know that, then you can start trying out more cartoony things. And the first thing I learned to draw was I studied a lot of Disney and Looney Tunes, and I started with really drawing these simple characters. So instead of these characters, I started with drawing Elmer Fudd, and he's more like this bean body, and this. But what's good about learning to draw with these shapes is that you're learning construction, and you're learning a lot of line of action, because it's so much more clear in cartoon art than in realistic art. And later I learned to draw more of these kind of things. So maybe you can try practicing these characters and draw them in different proportions. And what I'm showing here is that they use this in this method. I even think they use this in sports schools or medical schools about different body types. So you have a regular body type. I think I made this one myself up because I wanted to have a long character in it. But then you have this round shape character, so you can see it. Here this is round. This heavy, this more triangle. So you can see the gravity, and that's also important to think of. The gravity is pulling us down. So that's why so this feels really heavy. And this feels really strong. Also because it's opposing gravity. And of course, you can also use this for female. And with the female, I added this X or this hourglass shape. So you can see it here. This is, and you basically see this at all, but with this one, it's the most strong version. So this still triangle, you can still see a bit of that hourglass compared to this mill. So the difference is with the male, the shoulders are really wide, and with the female, you can even when they have broad shoulders, their hips are also a bit wider, and that's of course because of that the female has to deliver babies, or has. I'm not saying anything like that, but that the female has a body build, so with wider hips, so she can deliver babies. So that's that difference a bit. And here are some different body types again, but then you can see them in 3/4 view. And here you can see I'm using all these basic construction. And you can really simplify it, and it really depends on the style you want to work in. So here, this really square lady using all these squares here. Oh, here you can see the construction of it. And maybe you can try to use these constructions and try to create your own characters on it. Maybe you can even you can also take these ones from the book and create your own designs on it, draw your own hair on it, and so on. So then, but the good thing about that is that you learn to draw around these shapes. So you're learning to draw in 3D and with construction. So age, how people grow and get old. So when we are born, we are small. And then we get higher and higher, I think, until we're, I think when we're around 18 or something, or we keep growing. We even keep growing till we're 23 or 24, but really small. But the big spurt is until our 18. So we're growing in height. And if we're getting 25 or something, and we're going to work and we have different life, maybe we have kids, maybe we have a busy working life, you're growing in width and not anymore in height. And I mean with that is, yeah, you just see that with grown-ups, they get a bit fatter a lot of the times. And yeah, when you're getting older, your posture starts to change. Can you see? And there's even, we even get smaller medical. And I don't know exactly, but it's quite fun. So our spine, we have these, our spine things. It's an old person. The spine cones are closer to each other. So we're shrinking, actually. We're getting smaller after a certain age. And so, especially with drawing cartooning, you're trying to show that. Here I'm showing that. And this is also really great for portfolio, to create your character line with different ages. Maybe take your main character and show him from when he was a kid to a really old person. That's then you're showing that you understand the different ages. And I'm going to show some different ages. So here I'm showing the heads. And maybe you can see it. So here these eyes and this nose and mouth is really close. But here it's getting already a bit wider, and I'm trying to show that here. Here it's getting even more wider and more of more height in the between the eyebrows and the mouth. So that really starts to get longer and longer until we're at a certain age, and then it starts to shrink again. And that's also for the female. And we also find this cute that this is all almost at one level. It's all close together. We also find this forehead's really cute, and I'm showing that in the next slide. So we find this big forehead cute, chubby arms and legs. For some reason, we find chubby things cute. And I think because we are maybe programmed to like kids. And yeah, you have this pear-shaped body. So it's almost Elmer Fudd what we're seeing here. And also shown this more. So, but there is this anatomy under it. And understanding this can also help you understand how to create poses like this, because then you have this shoulder and this arm and so on. But other parts of the what baby makes a baby is a large forehead, round, tiny nose, ears are low, fluffy hair, and also tiny ears. Or tiny, not that even that tiny. Now you can make them a bit smaller, and that works also really well. Big eyes, because we find that cute. And it's also, I think, in proportions, our eyes get smaller as we are aging. Our head grows, but our eyes are growing at slower pace. So in cartoony, you can exaggerate that. And that's what with cartoony drawing is. We want to exaggerate things. So like exaggerating eyes and things we find cute. It's also the discussion with the Disney characters and Disney princess that they look like babies. But that's also because they want to make those characters cute and appealing. So they give them really big eyes. When you are drawing babies, use curved lines and no straights. So you can really use these nice lines. And I'm using CSI for that. So for example, if I have this construction of this arm, I used here an I line, and then I use this S line here, and then maybe a C line here. So that is a bit like this. So it's not holy, but that creates this nice contrast between sides. And you can also think of that this is a simple side, and this is a complex side. So what I mean with that is that one side is a bit more complex than the other side. Yeah, a lot of round shapes that makes it really babyish like. So let's look at teenagers, right? Or yeah, these are more kids, and still they look really friendly, cute nose, small neck. They're still a bit, they have those features of a baby, but they are also starting to grow up, a backpack or shoulder school book, full of energy, joyful. But at one point, we're getting older, and then, of course, we are getting hormones and growth spurts, and we are starting to get clumsy, want to be part of a group, emotionally unstable. And of course, these are cliches. I hope you aren't offended by it. But yeah, we are in cartoony business. We are in this character design business, so we want to exaggerate things, and you can use these things to make a rebel kid, or maybe a shy kid, or maybe give her some attitude, and you can use that. So maybe you can do some research about what is the age of the character you're drawing in, and what's her social status. You also can show that in your designs. So let's go to the next one, and then we're getting adults. So adults have stop growing in height, but growing in width. So it's a bit of a belly. Her hips are a bit wider. Here these aunt and uncle are even more heavy set. So you're playing around with that. And of course, you don't have to do this all the time, but these are cliches, and yeah, they work. The older people, large noses and ears. I think the ears and the noses keep growing as we get older. So you can make this really big nose, and it helps with making that person look older. Body parts get pulled down by gravity, so you can see it, all these wrinkles, it gets all pulled down, this chin. It loses also the posture, it's pulling down, they need these candlesticks. It's all weaker and more wrinkles and the postures. So that's how you can draw an older person. But I also talked before that they are smaller, but mainly because of their weak spine. Let's draw some hands. And people find drawing hands difficult, and it is because there are so much parts in a hand. It can be really difficult to draw a decent hand. So one thing you can do for that is to simplify it first, and maybe first practice drawing some basic hands. Like I will just show it. Again, start with some kind of line of action and draw one big round shape of it like this. And you divide it in the middle. And then you can draw a thumb on top of it. This thumb, and you can look at your own finger. So this thumb should be a bit, I think I drew this one a bit too long. So this. So, and look at your own hand a bit. And the fun thing is we're drawing cartoony, so it doesn't have to be super realistic. So this is our longest finger. So this goes like this. So here. And then we know we can also have some space between, and this part is almost straight up, just a bit like this here. So now we've drawn this, we can start drawing in the fingers like this here. And the hand. So like this. So, and then we have an hand. So, and when you know how to draw this, then you can use it with more difficult type of hands. So, for example, with this one, let's do the same thing, but then with this more difficult pose. So you start with a line of action. And let's take a different color so it's a bit more clear. And then we start, it's a bit different because we have this fist here. So maybe this wasn't the most perfect to start with, but just let's keep going anyway. So here, this is the part of the fingers, but there's one finger sticking out. So here we draw this finger sticking out. And I like to draw these fingers together as one shape first, because then that keeps this flow. And then here this wrist, then we add this thumb on top of it. So I'm using these basic shapes. And then I take a sketch pencil or brush and start drawing in those lines for the hands. So here, and this here, 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 and also here and here. So this is how I draw a hand, like that. And also let's do another one. I think this one is more easier. I think I should have started with that one. Oh well. So starting with the action line. And then I start drawing in the shapes here. Let's use a different color. Here, this cylinder, again using those basic construction shapes, making this part in two sides, and then attach this thumb to it, and then add these fingers here. And add this. Oh, I see this. I make this. So sometimes that's the nice thing about Photoshop. Then you can move it a bit closer. So, and then I erase it, and then you can draw in the final lines. So like here, draw. Think of these fingernails wrapping around the fingers. They're not perfect round, so it's not going around in that way. But this is basically how I draw hands, and maybe it's easier to show it a bit with an Mickey Mouse hand. So what we can do is, if you start with a ball, then start with a shape for the fingers, a separate shape, and then the thumb, and then you're using this line for the arm and wrist, and now you can start drawing in the fingers like this part. So you're adding the details later, and then in the end you can add the fancy lines to make it all nice and pretty. But I'm basically using this for those hands as well. Maybe you can pick these hands and study them, draw them in these construction shapes. And when you study those and you draw them in construction, you can send them to me. And if I have time, I can review them. So yeah, don't be afraid to send stuff to me. I really like to see it. And it's great practice. Try breaking these down in, try to see, oh, here we have these fingers going like this, and this thumb, and then this. And that also helps you understand the idea behind it. And it makes it also easier to draw your own hands. And once you figured out this, then you can maybe make pictures of your own hands in different positions and study those. So let's look at drawing feet. And so here I'm using basic construction again to draw a feet. So I start with drawing a ball, drawing a stick, drawing this arc, drawing this cylinder, drawing this shape, and then add another ball here. So this is almost like the bones part, but then really simplified. Then you can add all these shapes. And here, then we can erase it again. Then you can just draw on top of it, like you're putting one shape on top of it, like this here, and then here. But here, this is this cylinder, and that makes this part so that the part can move up and down. And this is our heel. But this part, this ball here, this can move around like this. It can also move up and down. So it can move sideways, but it can also move up and down. And this side can only move up and down because of the cylinder, and this is a ball. And these steps I basically take to, so when you have this, then it's easier to draw this or actually feet. So let's erase this a bit. So if you have drawn this shape, you can easily draw, or easily, it makes it more easy to draw this shoe on top of it. You can see, because I'm just following those shapes I drew earlier. So maybe you can try that out yourself with studying those these ones, or maybe try it out yourself. So here I'm drawing the sole first of the feet, so like this. And then that also makes it easier to draw the rest of the feet. So sometimes I use that little trick to draw the bottom side of the feet. To first draw this this bottom side. So let's continue. So drawing hair. With drawing hair, I usually start with just, if we have the skeleton, the skull, and the head like this here. Then I'm drawing the hair on top of it, like this here. So what I'm trying to tell here is that you can use this always this skull, and then draw these basic shapes first, and then you can add all the detail, and in the end you add even more detail. But I always start with these really big basic shapes. Also doing that here, so it's 1, 2, 3 shapes. Also here, so using this shape, and later I draw within the shape, just as with the fingers, with drawing the hand. And also here, drawing first this skull, and then you're adding all these parts to create this hair. It's also important to think of that this hair is falling down. It's pulled down by gravity. So the hair is moving down. But when there are curls, the curls make it bounce like this. So let me draw one of these examples. Yeah, let me draw this curl. So here we have this. Or let me take this. Why I'm doing this? I just have this one to start with. So I have this one. I put the opacity a bit down. And I take this purple color. And now I can start drawing first the big shape. So here, this is the hairline, and that's also important to know. So the hairs are coming out of that, from that line inwards. So here, maybe there's hair behind the ear. So think of how this goes, this shape. How does this shape is in 3D? And I can pick a different color. And we can draw on top of it. And we can add these curls like this here. And we're following this line. Also here, maybe adding some curls here. You are following that basic flow line. And that's what I'm trying to show here. So yeah, and that's basically it with drawing hair. So start with the big shapes and then break it down. So drawing clothing. And I always get this question about drawing clothing. A lot of people seem to find it quite difficult, and it is in some way, but there are also some tricks to make it really easy. So if this is an arm, if this arm has a t-shirt on it, it hangs with gravity. Or unless when someone is running, so maybe someone is running like this, oh, here, then this is by the force of the running, it's pushed that way. Or maybe if someone is standing here and the wind is coming from that way, maybe his pants is going like this. So always choose one side to show this hanging side and don't do this unless you really have good reason for it, but watch out for using that. Also, I think important thing is think of a point of tension. So if we have this nail and this nail holds this towel, you have these forces are coming together here, but here they are loose. So here you have all these lines coming together, and you can see that here you can see it. It's like this nail is here, and this is the point of tension. You can also have it here, so then you get these arcs here. So always think of these points of tensions like this here, or here. You can see it, or in the crotch. So here these lines are coming together there, or here. So and sometimes it's a bit more complicated, or here. So, and also if you're drawing a pants, don't draw it like this. I like to do one side a bit more detailed and one side a bit simpler. So it's simple versus complex side. What I'm showing here, complex versus simple. And also with squash and stretch. So here, this leg is pushed upwards. So here it's squashed. And here it's stretched. So think of that. So I'm showing that here, the difference between stretch and squash. And when someone is walking, you can see that force is going like this. And always try to have these nice flows. And you do that with first starting with a really basic shape. And then you're breaking it down with these folds and with these tension points. And think of where the folds come from. So here, this is around the waist. So this is like a big nail here, and here all these lines are coming from this point. Drawing silhouettes are also really important when drawing. So because here we have this silhouette here, but it's not really clear what it's showing here. But here it is, because there's a nice balance of positive and negative space. The negative space is the white, and the positive space is the black. Try to think of, even when you're drawing a still standing character, your silhouette should be really clear so that you can see what the character is doing, or it also communicates a bit about you're trying to tell with the character. Also, the silhouette is we humans, we really look at silhouettes. We recognize a kid in it, or a strong person, or if someone is a rocker. We really, one of the first things we see from someone is the silhouette. And it's also a really great way to start drawing your character. You can actually, some artists like to start with drawing silhouette. And so maybe you can try that out for once. So take a big brush and draw some shapes and draw your, so I'm basically doing what I'm telling here. So you can start with this, and then you can start drawing over it, but you can already see that this shape is already having some personality. So here, my best drawing ever. So here you can start sketching on top of it, and you really get some fun things by it. So maybe you can try it yourself by taking these silhouettes and draw your own characters on top of it. So with character design, things like colors and shapes can really add character to your character and personality. And and these are rules, and it's also a bit cultural, so it's really different. But for this example, blue is a common color for heroes, the same for red and yellow. So that's why with heroes you see often these type of colors. I also used round and soft corners to make the character really powerful. So I used the round corners to make him friendly, but also a bit of the square to make him feel strong, like really strong character from it. And here with this character, the evil guy, I use purple because that's more an so I've written that down here, is more associated with greed, fire, and mystery, all these colors. The triangle have energy and they can be unstable. So a triangle can be really stable if it's on one side, but if you move it a bit like this, then it's unstable. And think of the teeth of a shark. They're pointy and dangerous, and that's why they work really good for enemies. So here you can see these hard corners, and here these soft corners. So try to think of some colors and shape language to really give your character personality. Inking. So I keep it always really simple, and so I start with a sketch, and I start with inking the outlines. So because I want those to be the thickest, then I with the thin brush I add the lines inwards. Those are a bit thinner, and I try to, and when I'm drawing lines, I also try to avoid parallel lines, what I talked earlier about style. So that's also really important with inking. That's why a good inking can make or break a drawing. So a good inking can make a bad drawing okay, but a good drawing and it's inked bad makes the whole thing bad. Overlapping two pieces of something of one corner. So what I'm also doing, yeah, here are these parts that are overlapping, like these parts or these parts, I give a little bit of extra weight. And in the end, shading. I'm adding some shading and some extra nodes for the line thickness. So the most important things I give heavy light, and less important things I give a thin light. So it's the inwards of the ear, I give a thinner light than the outside of the ear. And I don't use that big of difference. I could have made these lines way thicker, but I don't like it to have it that obvious. But you can choose to do it. For sometimes it works really well. So to end this course, I wanted to show some portfolio projects. And for a personal project, I wanted to create a candy shop owner. So I started with making lots of sketches. And when I've made those sketches, I'm working them out. And then I ask myself, what kind of character do I want to make? And what do I want to show it? So once I've made those heads, I start drawing the whole characters with the bodies. And then I pick a couple and create some of the characters to finally pick one character out and use that. Once I have that character, I create a model sheet. Okay, with this girl. And one tip I want to give about drawing model sheet is it's really good for portfolio projects. So it's really good to add in your portfolio. And sometimes you're seeing that they are drawing them really stiff like this. But for your portfolio, I would advise you to draw your characters like this, because that has so much more life and personality. And in some cases, it can be that they ask for T-pose, but I'm only drawing T-poses when they really ask for it, because I like to draw these characters more like this, because that says way more about their personality. Nobody stands like this. So that's that's really bad, unless a modeler really needs it. This is a project I made for the Creative magazine. And here you can see me, I start with sketching in my sketchbook, making a lot of sketches, and then I pick one of those designs and I use it in my final design. So I'm doing a lot of different takes before I finish a drawing. And here I made this lineup, and I think this is something that's really great for your portfolio if you want to be a character designer. So once you learned all the techniques, you can create your own character lineup and pick something like a medieval or sci-fi or maybe a family, and create the whole family and maybe the neighbors. And that's also really the strong thing about being a character designer. You can create your own IP, intellectual property. And for your portfolio, it's really good to create your own IP. If you want to work for movies, start by creating your own movies. Do as if you're making your own next Pixar movie and create all the characters for it. And do as if Steven Spielberg asks you, oh, how does the neighbors look? And so on. And because you want to show you know how to do it. And if you know how to do it on your own, you can also do it in a team. So making character lineups is a great portfolio showcase piece. And that's the end of this video. If you have any question after watching this video, let me know. Reach out to me on Instagram or on my Patreon or somewhere else. And I'm happy to answer any question. So thanks for watching, everyone. And I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks and bye.